Good morning, all. Thank you for your hushed, almost religious quietness, which is very appropriate. Welcome, and thank you very much for turning out. For those that don't know me, my name is Shaun Leonard. I'm the director of WTT. Hopefully you'll meet some of the other staff during the day. I will introduce some of them in short order. So, what do I want to talk about? We have got some Butts Brewery beer, which is in there. So if you'd like a pint at lunchtime, please go and help yourselves. I've got a little donations bucket, which you can chuck £2 in for a pint. There isn't an awful lot of the Butts beer left because we drank most of it last night. So let's do my bit of stuff. So the general thought was I'm going to run it in two broad chapters. What's been happening with the 13-14 year, the last year since I did this blurb on the Dart, and what we're going to do with the year ahead. Okay, so it's used for. I apologise for those of you that have seen me give this kind of gig before. It's pretty much the same, probably. It was very much the same because actually my PowerPoint imploded at 5:10 last night. So some of this, the ink is still very wet on. So this is kind of some of the stuff that we've done with the year. The conservation officers have gone out and they've done something like 60 advisory visits. If you've had an advisory visit, you know the mechanics of that. I'll tell you a little bit more about it in a second. And in the vast majority of cases, those advisory visits turn into work in the river. And you will see an example this afternoon with the River Chess Association where an earlier advisory visit has been picked up by the association and stuff's been done in the river, and that's the acid test. With a fair old geographical spread, so the Gwash in Rutland, west to the Robe River in County Galway, and in the south from the Colborne, which is a stream on the Isle of Wight, north to Durham. I think that's about as far north as we went in this last year. Gareth, is that right? Can you go any further north than Durham? I made it up, but I think it's about right. Chip Chase, on the Tyne. Thank you, sorry, I should have thought of that. And it would have rhymed with Colborne. Well, it would have been alliteration. Bugger. We've run something like 20 practical demonstration events, and they've been from the county of Kent in the southeast, up to the county of Tyrone, and then we're running about 35 smaller projects scattered around the country. From, for example, the South Coast Sea Trout project, the work that Paul's doing in various towns around the country, and then up into East Anglia, through the Welland and the Lincolnshire chalk streams and so on and so on. So this is, and I apologise for those of you that know this, this is old hat stuff. This is an example of an advisory visit. So one of the conservation officers comes out, he walks the river with the fishing club, the landowner, the volunteer group, which is a new constituency for us. And he describes some of what you'll hear this afternoon. Good habitat, bad habitat, what might be done to make life a bit better for trout and for other animals in the river. So his report identifies problematical issues, like this stuff on the Bullbourne at Berkhamsted, and his report, hopefully in fairly simple language draws to some conclusions and recommendations. I'm going for a wander because I've no idea if you can see any of that. Yeah. Okay. And we've also had a brilliant day for brilliant year for practical demonstration events. The boys have been out getting wet and muddy with lots and lots of volunteer groups. And here's just a few examples. So hereabouts in the local vicinity, Mike, Andy and others working with Nancy, as you'll hear, I'm probably using some of the same photographs as you, ran a brilliant series of events on the Gade, the Ver, the Colne, the Rosebery Stream, yeah. Yeah. So the idea of these days is again to try and bring people into the concept of being able to recognise what issues are in rivers, that, for example, weirs may not be the best thing on the planet, and then what can be done to improve habitat. And as you know, our standard prescription is to use cheap and cheerful stuff like woody debris, which is what I think Mike is pointing at there on the Gade. and indeed what Luke Kozak, who was working with Mike, is absolutely pointing at on the gate. And then it's an opportunity for people to have a go themselves. And that's the critical part of it. And hopefully demystify that working in rivers is not a particularly complex thing. And, of course, to get nice teams of people together doing it. And I think one of the real successes of this lot is that it's been, in this case, it was bringing Environment Agency staff, including flood defence consenting officers, local council people, local anglers, the water company in this case, 2 water companies in this case, all together, just mucking about in the river. Really, really good opportunity for building relationships, which is what Nancy's going to talk about in a little while. Here's another event that Tim ran on the Leiden, and there is a clue as to who is participating in this event. Okay? So Tim has only got a little one this big, this fella's got one absolutely massive. Now, who are most of the people involved in this day? From which organisation did they come? How do you know that? Wear life jackets, yes. These are not ordinary people, these are EA staff. Yeah, poor things. But again, it's a brilliant day for them to get involved in the river work together. And I know from certainly last year when I did some work with Mike on the Ver, some of these guys, some of the volunteers have never been in chest waders in water. So it's quite a steep learning curve to go from feeling that your waders are filling up with water, no they're not actually, or they may be, through to actually doing some work. Yeah. Yes. And one of the beauties of this day with Tim is they actually did something useful. So it wasn't just buggering about in the river as I often describe it, but something resulted from the day. So there's a bit of the River Leiden in Gloucestershire, eroding bank, and they've stuck in a really nice brash D groin, but it's also protecting that bank. And then the Lochs Agency event. So I said to Tim and Andy, how about you go up to Northern Ireland for a week in September of last year, which they duly did. And they worked with, and again there's a clue who their constituency is, but they worked with the local Lochs Agency, some of the local fishing clubs, and they were again doing simple demonstration events of what can be done in those streams. And these guys had no experience at all of this kind of work. But again, Tim and Andy threw them in, day glowing all over the place, and did lots and lots of very simple, coarse woody debris stuff in their small streams. And we've also done some great projects. So this is one I think I've used very often, but in this last year, Andy, working with brilliant locals, and one of them, Clive, is here, did some extraordinary work on the Great Stour. In the middle of that lot there is a chalk stream. So the project, which was funded, an interesting funding dynamic, this one. It was funded by the Sitter Trust, and the money from the Sitter Trust was triggered by a donation from a well-heeled WTT member. And so the well-heeled WTT member gave us $2,500, which I think turned, at the end of the day, by the time the agency had chucked in some money and so on, turned into a project pot that was 40-odd K. This was phase 3 of the work, and Andy did a project that entailed peeling back all of that sparganium, sticking in some features, faggoting and the like, sticking in this case, 800 tons of gravel, and recreating a chalk stream. So from that kind of reed-filled ditch, sorry, Clive, that's rather demeaning of your stream. How does it look now, Clive?
It looks great.
Good.
Yeah.
Brilliant.
Really coming on. Yeah.
And one of the critical things about this was the partnership with the local fishing club, and particularly that guy, who is very unwell at the moment. So we think of Paul Bates, but he was really, really instrumental in the project. And then another one, again in the south on the River Rother, which is another one of Andy's babies, which is just kind of, as you can see, a fairly slow-flowing, bits of glyceria growing in it, but it's not particularly interesting. So I think Andy chucked in several hundred tons, 600 tons odd of gravel to start recreating some riffles. In this case, did something a bit non-trouty, which is excavated some backwaters, which hopefully coarse fish fry and other stuff will like. But bugger me, on his riffles, was it the next day, Andy?
The following morning after the gravel had gone in.
This thing appears, which Andy describes as a stonking great sea trout. And there is the stonking great sea trout. Big old fish. I don't think you get a scale of that really, but it's a sizable lump. Build it and they will come. So in this year as well, I think hopefully we've taken our website on a little bit, and I will encourage you to visit it if you haven't. The idea when we set out on recreating our website was to have a sort of place where people interested in trout rivers could go and find some interesting stuff. That was it, really. It was a fairly simple mission. And Denise and others have done a fantastic job. So there are now nigh on 500 advisory visit reports dating back over the last 13 years from all over the country, really starting to fill in the gaps on rivers. And there is an ever-growing library. We have, thanks to Paul, a huge, it's either 30, I think I may have miscounted, it's 36 or 37 WTT videos. Some of them are incredibly famous. Sent to David Cameron in the dredging debate, for example. I don't suppose he watched it, but we've got lots and lots of other type of stuff, CDs as PDFs, for example, the Chalk Stream Habitat Manual. Some really nice habitat management sheets that Denise was involved in the creation of, and then loads of other stuff, our own stuff and other people's stuff. For example, John Gray, who you're going to hear from in just a sec, has got loads of stuff on there, blah, blah, etc., etc. So go and have a look at it. It's dead simple. Have a sniff around. I'm sure you will find stuff interesting there. E.g., this stuff about ferox trout. I've got an ulterior motive for picking on ferox trout, as you'll see. But if you go into the library bit, there's a half a dozen pieces on ferox trout. So an hour cruising through that lot and you'll be an expert on ferox trout, doubtless. Like Fish Porn Moment, one of our trustees. So this is Alan Kettle-White, who wrote some of the ferox stuff that's on our website. And last Friday, so 8 days ago, Alan caught this fish from Loch Orr. He didn't catch it on a fly, you'll be surprised to hear. He caught it on a plug that's about that long. But it is 30 pounds on the nose. It's his second 30-pounder, and he thinks it's the biggest authenticated male ferox caught in modern times. Hell of a fish, isn't it? Phew. So we recover from that. Yeah, so what? It's all very well having a nice website, but what's the point of it? Well, we hope the point is people are going to use it. And if you believe web stats, and Denise and I will scratch our heads about this, can it actually be true? This is what the curve of usage, unique visitors to our website looks like. So we're kind of 18,000 unique visits a month. I'm thinking, oh, we're doing okay. And then I spoke to Simon last night about the Corda website. Corda sell bits of carp fishing tackle, and they get 200,000 visits a month. So we're getting there. We've got some way to go. But you can see it's quite interesting. I mean, the upturn... I can't do that. The upturn on the graph at the end, we would expect an upturn in the spring because of our spring eBay auction. But it seems to be kind of holding up, which is interesting. Again, if you believe the stats. What does that say? Oh yes, and this is the other critical bit. People are actually downloading the information. So we've got the thick end of kind of 25,000 downloads per month. Again, if you believe the stats. So it's suggestive that people are using the information, which is encouraging. And the fantastic library of mostly Paul's videos are also being downloaded and viewed. So I think the website's been in existence a couple of years in its current format, and we've got approaching 20,000 views of videos. It's quite interesting just to see what it is that people are looking at. The bottom one, I don't think you'll be able to see it. That one there says M River dredging. That's the one that I was talking about that Paul put together when the dredging debate kicked off, that second to bottom one. So maybe one of those views is David Cameron. Who knows? And then we've done billions of workshops, talks, conferences, events. Mike spoke at the RRC conference. Paul did a talk at the IFM conference, blah, blah, etc., etc. So there's loads and loads of stuff. And we still do lots of kind of going to fishing club and fly tying guild evening jobs too, which is really important. And the bottom two, also, as best we can, getting into schools, universities, colleges. We've really good link with John Gray at Queen Mary, with the guys at Southampton, and so on and so on. And this year, we did enter, the political arena is not ours, that's occupied by the Angling Trust, by the Salmon and Trout Association. But we did enter the dredging debate, and we contributed very much to the SciWem report, the reality check report, just based on the principle that it was trying to redress the rabid pro-dredging lobby. I don't mean to belittle what was happening to people in Somerset and Kent and so on and so on, but there was an awful lot of cods being spoken. So we did contribute to the SciWem stuff, both financially with a few quid, but also with some case studies. So if you have actually seen the report, you'll see that the stuff that the case studies that Tim developed on the manifold, those two pictures demonstrate the manifold, show some of the issues from dredging. And equally, the really brilliant photographs from Lawrence Greasley on the Lowther, which feature in this report, came through WTT. And then Mayfly in the classroom stuff. We're going to try and do more about this, but the basic principle is we're trying to get kids into it, using into river type stuff, using very, very simple technology, such as lemonade bottles. So Sue Scott over there in the corner, that would be Sue Scott. That one on the right is doing our Mayfly in the classroom stuff, okay, and developing things really interestingly, I think. And then there was the WTT auction. Well, tremendous success. So again, thanks to Denise, we just fell shy of the 60k mark. But it's extraordinary that year on year we've got somewhere about a 10% increase in income from the WTT auction, which is just brilliant. And that is proper cash for us. The auction now just about matches our income from membership, which is problematical, because that suggested that membership's static, but it's also brilliant news. And thank you to all of you that contribute lots or indeed buy lots. Like John Pollard, we had a brilliant day catching carp on the fly. Brilliant day. And I think John looks pretty chuffed, doesn't he? But it isn't all good news. So on this bit, there's not much bad news, but there is some bad news. Money's tight, competition's hot. We now have in England 110 catchment partnerships that we didn't have a year ago, and suddenly the pool is full of people looking for dosh. So competition is hot. Membership is pretty static at best. Static is probably a euphemism. Ben left. Ben Tyser left during the last year. Ben Tyser's here, brilliant to see you again. Ben was our Mayfly in the classroom guy, our research and education officer. The only good thing about Ben leaving is that it gave an opportunity for Sue to join. And then Gareth turned his back on us. I use that rather derogatory term only because it's just a cheap joke for this photograph, really, which is Gareth in his natural domain. That really helps to show you what Gareth looks like, doesn't it? This is much clearer. Because that's Gareth having caught a 6-pound fish from the Tweed. Was it caught on a fly? No. It was caught on a Meps. So yes, if you I don't know if you spotted the subtlety of Tim's joke in Salmo of last year. Was it last year? Gareth Metal Mickey Pedley was the caption to the photograph. Did you ever spot that, Gareth?
I did, yeah.
So Gareth is joining the Eden Rivers Trust full time. We've had half of Gareth, they've had half of Gareth. They've now got all of Gareth, all 6'4" of him, as their catchment fisheries manager. So you'll get a chance to say goodbye to Gareth. So what's the plan? Well, here's the plan roughly. We have to carry on doing our bread and butter stuff, going out, advising clubs, showing them what to do in the river, advising them what to do in the river, doing it well and doing it with good value for money. A day of our conservation officers costs our donors something like 240 quid. Now that seems bloody good value to me. If you've got a farm advisor to come and walk around on a farm, he or she would cost 350, 400 quid. So I think in terms of market, that's just fine. Why did it do that? What have I just done? Wrong button. We get brilliant ongoing support from the agency. Had I done this presentation 2 months ago, I didn't know whether the agency were going to be supporting us into 14-15, but they are. And so it's only the Angling Trust and the Wild Trout Trust that get any substantial funds, rod licence funds, out of the Environment Agency. So we're one of very, very few beneficiaries. And hopefully it's critical that we use my rod licence money well. This year we are going to run things called Rivers and Wetlands Community Days, which is a collaborative project between ourselves, the Angling Trust and the Environment Agency locally within the Thames Water Supply catchment to run days on lakes, rivers, wetlands, estuaries possibly, just getting local groups involved with their rivers. The principle is that WTT will hold a pot of dosh, in the first year 50 grand, to which local groups can apply to run days to get people involved. It could involve us, it could involve our conservation officers, it could involve other groups, other expert groups working with those local community groups. So I'm just finalising the blurb about how it's going to work, and there will be stuff on the WTT website in due course. We're going to develop some more trout in the town groups. That's Paul's target. We are going to need to replace Gareth for the far frozen north with the work that he's been doing. Really interesting upturn in the 13-14 year. 37% of the advisory visits that were done were in the northwest and northeast region. So Gareth's work's really kind of getting the ball rolling up there. Sue's going to be getting Mayfly in the classroom out to more places and more kids. And we're going to try and reach out to more unis and colleges, more kids. We'll try and bung some more stuff on the website, keep it nice and active, busy. And we're going to write a book. This is my idea. Probably A Drunken Night Last Year in the Dart, I think. But I just, if you know books like Crisp, Peggy Brown's book, they're the kind of definitive trout ecology, trout biology things. We've got CDs, we've got DVDs, we've got sheets, we've got videos, blah, blah, blah. We haven't written a book. So I think we're going to write one this year with a working title of The Life of Trout. We just need to do it. And we're going to fund our future. That's really, really important to keep us on the road. Now, connected to that, and this is a slightly odd finish point, is this. So that there is no ordinary filing cabinet, apparently. That there is the filing cabinet of Peter Lapsley, RIP. It's his fly tying cabinet, which we have been donated. So at some point, probably next year, we will auction that thing. Now, I guess if you're a fly tyer, it probably means something. I'm not really sure, being somebody who ties bass flies on about a size 3.0. But I suspect he hasn't got that kind of kit in that cabinet. But that's the plan. So it's a really nice legacy that Peter Lapsley has left us. And I'm toying with the idea of working with Paul Jennings for a kids fishing teaching project running here at Restore Hope, funded, at least in part, by whatever this cabinet raises. And it seems quite appropriate, since Peter Lapsley ran this fishery for a while, that his fly tying kit might generate a few quid and go back to teaching kids at Latimer. There's a certain circularity around it, isn't there? So, thank you, that's my lot.